Welcome back to another episode of Vikings Happy Hour presented to you by Lake Monster Brewing and That's Badass Wood Art. Remember to go check out that'sbadasswoodart.com and use promo code CTPocket for 20% off any one item. We got a great show for you here today. We have Thor Nystrom joining us, draft guru, all things college football, fantasy betting. I mean, literally everything. He knows a little bit about everything. So I'm very happy to have Thor on today. How you doing, Thor?
I'm doing great, man. Good to be with you.
Always, always. So obviously this is probably like the busiest week leading up to the draft here for you, the next week and a half. Really, really busy. So thank you so much for a little bit of the time today. Hoping that you can give our listeners a little bit of insight on some of the different prospects that we're likely going to be hearing next week, who you might think is going to be a good fit for us, and what route we might go or what route you want to go. And I'll probably provide
that's actually my alarm on my telephone. That's what I wake up to every morning. But yeah, sorry about that.
I love it. I love it. So why don't we dive in? So again, a lot to kind of go over, but the Vikings are in a kind of conundrum. The big one that's been a huge talking point over the last, couple weeks has been the quarterback and all the different quarterback prospects out there. I just saw you put out a tweet about 10 minutes ago that I absolutely loved. So why don't we talk quarterbacks first? So what do you think the Vikings are thinking? What do you want them to do at quarterback?
Oh, they're sniffing around the quarterback class. Like I was trying to think about the last cycle where the Vikings, not this any of the previous administrations did this much work on the quarterback class. It's been a couple years, but this year they are. This spring they spent a lot of time doing homework on those quarterbacks, talking to all of them, visiting with them, etc. So, yeah, and we have heard a lot of different reports, both specific to the Vikings and now. With regards to CJ Stroud, where if you start connecting some dots, it only takes a couple things for CJ Stroud to start falling down the board. And I think that it's a plausible scenario that the Vikings could get aggressive in making an offer for a slot where they could take him potentially.
I just don't see how. I mean, me personally, I don't know if you feel the same way. I have Stroud as my number one quarterback on the board. So the fact that there's talk of the Texans saying, you know what, we're good when all they have is Davis Mills right now. Obviously, they have another first round pick. They'd probably take someone, but just unfathomable to me that he would even slip past two.
Yeah, I mean, he's my quarterback too, but he's number 2 overall on my big board. So, yeah, I mean, if I was Houston, that would be a really quick moment of turning in the card, obviously assuming that Bryce Young goes number 1 or whatever. But a lot of the stories out there about CJ Stroud right now are BS, like the Manning camp stuff and whatnot. The reason that he has fallen in the perception of the NFL is he bombed the S2 test, like had a really bad score. People made a really big deal out of Bryce Young acing that thing. CJ Stroud was on the opposite side of the spectrum. So that's like any of the other stuff out there about it. It's all BS. Like the Manning camp thing is irrelevant. There was a couple other things. They were so meaningless that, you toss them out of your mind or whatever. It's the S2 test. That's why this is happening.
And that basically like replaced the Wonderlic, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So has there been a quarterback in recent history, S2, Wonderlic, that has bombed that but have gone on to have a successful career?
Well, the S2 hasn't been used for very long, number one. And number 2, they don't release the results publicly. One of my earlier tweets today was demanding the release of all the S2 scores. You only hear about them piecemeal if it's really good news for the guy or if it's really bad. And that's why we have heard Bryce Young aced it and CJ Stroud did not. And, just a couple other tidbits. But I would like them all released publicly. We just don't have that yet.
Sure. So if we don't see CJ Stroud take a fall, right? Say Texans go ahead and take him at 2, the smart move. Anthony Richardson, Will Levis, Hendon Hooker. That's kind of I wouldn't even say Hendon Hooker and Will Levis. I think Anthony Richardson's the next tier, right? Do you see a potential fall there, or is he kind of a lock in at 4? Anthony Richardson.
Yeah. No, I don't think Richardson's going to go 4. The Colts like Levis. So, I mean, the real question is if Houston and Arizona stay in their slots and it gets to Indy, how much do they like Levis? Because that's when it would be Levis against Stroud ostensibly. I know that Irsay loves Irsay specifically. It's funny that the stuff about the Colts, like in Levis, is like started to come out publicly or whatever. Because I've been hearing for months that Irsay loves Levis, and now like it's like I don't know if there's other people in the building or this is just other people hearing about Irsay liking him or whatever. But it'll be interesting to see if CJ Stroud is on the board, if people are going to fight Irsay in the war room of being like, dude, we had to take CJ Stroud here.
Right. Do you like Will Levis?
No. I mean, like, no, but like, I have him as a late first round pick. He's my QB4. I agree with the way that you set that up of like, for me, it's a drop in a tier after Young and Stroud, and then to Richardson, who I have number 3 on my board, just because overall, right. Like,
okay, sure.
Yeah, like because the value of the position is such where if I like the quarterback or if I project him to be a good starter in the NFL, you have to put him at the top of the board, whatever. So I got him high, but Levis I'm gonna have in the 20s or something like that.
Sure.
So but anyway, the Colts seem to prefer that, and that would be great news to the team sitting at 7. Who I'm told loves Anthony Richardson, so they might be able to. The Raiders I'm talking about might be able to just stand pat. And he falls right into their lap. But then you start to wonder, where is the team for Stroud? Like so here's the scenario. For Vikings fans out there wondering about the plausibility of the CJ Stroud scenario. As you can tell, I've been at the cork board quite a bit, connecting the dots like Charlie Day and Always Sunny or whatever. And then
that's funny.
like you hear stuff and then you start putting it together. You're like, oh man, like all the rumors. And then in conjunction with knowing the Vikings had talked to the 49ers about Cousins at the combine, and that those two teams have also talked about Trey Lance's offseason, stuff like that. But the scenario is Houston stands pat and takes presumably Will Anderson. Like there's been a lot of smoke about that. And then 3, Arizona stuck there because their trade market, reportedly they had gotten contacted by 6 teams about a trade. Like, I don't know, this came out a couple of weeks ago or whatever, but we'll see. Well, at least the perception, if CJ Stroud's stock is falling as much as has been put out there the past couple of days or whatever, will the trade market for Arizona dry up to the point where they don't feel like they have an acceptable offer to move down or whatever, because they don't need the quarterback, of course, but they have holes everywhere else. And you're going to have blue chip defensive prospects still on the board. Even if Will Anderson's gone, Jalen Carter would be in play there. Tyree Wilson would be in play there. Certainly those 2 guys. If they stand
even one of those corners, granted, you don't want to take one of those corners over Carter probably, but if they have a huge need at corner, so they may say, hey, I really want Christian Gonzalez or Devin Witherspoon.
And they won't be able to move down far and get Witherspoon, assuming that's their guy, because Detroit likes Witherspoon. So and Witherspoon is a Detroit kind of guy, and at least in my eyes, locked in CB1 with his 40-yard dash, which like his play speed is good. So I don't know why there was a ton of questions about this. I think because he had a wonky recruiting process. It's funny how the recruiting stars and stuff like that follow the player like perceptually, but Witherspoon he quit football like in 7th grade, and he didn't play again until 11th grade because his mom like talked to him and was like, hey, would you try football again for me? Like, I'd love to watch you play in football. And so he's like, well, okay, sure. And so then he goes back out and, his next year as a senior, he was like the, county player of the year or whatever, but the recruiting service had just missed him. Cause like anyone else in any other job, like you sort of do the work initially and then you get lazy with it. Witherspoon wouldn't have been on in any of their spreadsheets like before that. And then, because I'm playing, and then like all of a sudden he bursts up, but everybody just missed it or whatever, except for Lovie Smith. Interestingly enough, he was the guy that offered that scholarship in the summer, like literally a month before the season was going to start, like late July of that year. Witherspoon was going to go to a community college, but anyway, enough about Devin Witherspoon. I think, but I do, lastly, I do think he deserves to be talked about with the other elite defenders in this class. I'm not going to rank him, above Will Anderson or Jalen Carter, But for me, he ain't far off from that. The tape last year was dominant. And, I mean, like he's 180, whatever pound, 184, 103, something like that. But like the athletic package, it's sufficient to for his game or whatever. He's going to be a fabulous NFL cornerback.
And the mentality, right? Like
the mentality.
I mean, he's got a dog in him for sure. So you love a corner that not only can cover, that's probably the best part of his game, but and then it's hard to ignore his run support and his ability to get up on the line and make those plays.
Yeah. So Witherspoon shows up to Illinois in August when they had already started training camp for that season. Like they offered him in late July. And one of the reasons this happened is because he didn't academically qualify with his initial test. So he had actually moved. Witherspoon is from Florida. He had moved from Florida to the middle of Kansas to go to that Hutchinson Community College because he thought he wasn't going to academically qualify. The day after he gets to Hutchinson, is like unpacking his stuff or whatever, he gets the notification that his SAT score has qualified him, where now he's going to academically qualify at any FBS program. And there was like 5 or 6 G5 programs that have been passively monitoring it, who still had an open scholarship, who immediately offered him. And then he's like thinking about this for like a week of like, okay, do I stay at Hutchinson or do I go to one of these G5 places? And then Illinois swoops in with an offer. So he was like done, like because Witherspoon, he was always crazy confident in himself. And he's like, I'm a Power 5 player, whatever, which is the reason why he might have stayed at Hutchinson for 1 year to prove it and then jump up to a Power 5 school. But anyhow, then it took him a couple of weeks, whatever, get all of his stuff, find travel arrangements. He gets to Illinois early August of that year, shows up 150 pounds. And like he has said this in numerous stories that like he walks into the building and the other football players, like I guess he got confused for a student manager. And then like the players, when they knew he was on the roster, were like making fun of like the size thing. They were cracking jokes and stuff. But right when they seen him start practicing, that stopped. And Illinois was going to redshirt him because this is a guy that nobody else offered scholarships, no other Power 5s, and even the G5 ones. It waited until the academic stuff was resolved, whatnot. And he was 150 pounds. Like you needed to put him in the weight room or whatever. But he was so good in practices that they were like, we need him on the active roster. And the crazy thing is he didn't start his first year, but he was on the field his first year. And he had one of those like legend making moments. It was like the 6th game of their season, something like that. That first year they played Wisconsin in October, and he chased down, I think it was Kendrick Pryor from behind. Illinois was a 31, or I'm sorry, not Illinois. Wisconsin was a 31.5 point favorite. This is when Illinois sucked. And I think this was Jonathan Taylor. Yeah, it was Jonathan Taylor's last year with Wisconsin. Well, anyway, Illinois kept it reasonably close. It was only a touchdown game, like early in the fourth quarter. Kendrick Pryor gets the ball, breakaway to the end zone. Witherspoon chases him down, tackles him at the 3. Illinois' defense is all jacked up now. They do a goal line stand, force Illinois to settle for a field goal. So instead of it being a 14-point game, it was a 10-point game. Illinois rallies back to win on a walk-off field goal. And so, like, after that, Illinois fans were like, oh, my God, this guy, like, legend. And then Lovie Smith
saved the game.
Exactly. Yeah. He literally flipped the outcome of the game by chasing down Kendrick Pryor. Like, Wisconsin wins that game if he doesn't. It just is what it is.
All effort right there. Yeah. I love
exactly.
That.
Yeah. And the next year, he won the starting job, one of the starting cornerback jobs coming out of camp. Lovie Smith told reporters, like, early that fall, something like that Witherspoon was pound for pound the toughest guy on the team, which it's like in hindsight, it's like, yeah. But like at the time, it's like, holy, like this former NFL coach is like, he says a lot of nice shit about, I don't know if I can swear.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. A lot of nice shit about Devin Witherspoon to reporters, like very complimentary. And Lovie Smith is obviously a defensive guru, like in the NFL, whatever, that's where he made his, he's made his bones or whatever. So like that was sort of eye opening. And then Witherspoon just got better and better and better, attacking player downhill. Like you mentioned the feistiness. He doesn't, to him, it's not a thing what his size is, because he's been, his first year when he came back for football, when he was a junior in high school, he won the safety job that year coming out of the high school training camp. And so his ethos, it's always been attack downhill. He sort of plays that portion of the game like a safety, even at his frame, right? Like, I mean, you don't see cornerbacks that are that size that crash down like that and just throw their body around like a projectile. And so like you have that stuff, and then just so damn sticky in coverage. Like last year, so people will toss out the stats with him. It's actually even kind of crazier than just the road stats itself. Like if you see the PFF, I believe the stat is that the opposing NFL quarterback rating allowed last year by Devin Witherspoon on his targets was lower than what the NFL quarterback rating is for an incompletion. But it's even crazier because Witherspoon actually did not play well in the Indiana game in week 2. He got burned once, and he ends up giving up like 6 catches for like 100. I think it was 100 and I'm doing this from memory, but 103 yards or 106 yards. It was something like that. Well, anyway, over the next 10 games, it's as dominant a stretch by a college corner that you're ever going to see. I think it was 103 yards during the Indiana game. Next 10 games, he gave up exactly 103 yards combined over those 10 games. Like he was like, like that's it. He went to another level at that point, and just an all-around game and everything like that. So for me, that one is not a debate. I debate some of the other positions, stuff like that. Who's going to be at the top? Cornerback 1 for me, that was an easy one.
So 5-6 minute rant on Devin Witherspoon, who's definitely out of range for the Vikings, but it's all relevant because that's another guy who's going to push one of these quarterbacks down the list here for the Vikings to potentially go grab one. Let's say, we talked a lot about quarterback already. Obviously the hot name is Hendon Hooker. I know you're not a big fan. So let's move past that, because honestly at 23, I'm just not sure, right? I don't think that would be a wise move. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. I like him more than most, right? But I still don't think I like him at 23. So if we're not there at quarterback, Stroud gets taken, AR gets taken, Levis is gone, we don't want to go Hooker route. What do we do? What are you looking to do? Obviously, trade back scenario is ideal, right? Because we need picks. We have 5 picks. But who are some of those guys at positions of need and or best available that you think that could really strike well for the Vikings as we do this competitive rebuild?
Like at the 23rd slot?
Either at 23, or if we do a small trade back to like the end of the first, plus we maybe pick up like a 3rd round pick at that point.
Yeah, I mean, like, later in the first, in the 20s or whatever, you're the guys I think that are fits for the positions, at least for me, it's wide receiver and cornerback. I've been on the wide receiver take the wide receiver 2 to Jefferson bandwagon all process. I think it's going to depend on which one gets down to them, right? Like Jackson Smith and Jigba, they're a team. Lance Zierlein said this yesterday, on Twitter, but this is, this is just the book on him. The team see Jackson Smith. Some teams see Jackson Smith and Jigba as a slot only, which of course, that's what he did at Ohio State, whatever. I guess the implication is there are some teams that believe he can play outside, and certainly some evaluators that believe that, whatnot. But like for the Vikings, after they signed Josh Oliver to go with TJ Hawkinson, they're going to be in 12 personnel regularly. So the guy they take has to play on the outside, right? And so Jackson Smith and Jigba maybe not quite as clean a fit, although interestingly enough, I've changed my Jackson Smith and Jigba comp to Adam Thielen, so maybe I'm contradicting myself in the same paragraph. But the receivers that I think are better fits for the Vikings, just right out of the box, would be Zay Flowers, who I think I've mocked to the Vikings more than any other individual player during this draft process. Yeah, like you want a guy that's going to beat single coverage. Nobody could stay with Zay Flowers in space. And he's a smaller receiver, but he has proven that he can play on the outside. His offensive
plays big, though. He plays big.
Yeah, and he goes downfield and he gets it, right? Like he has ball skills downfield. Certainly is a killer short and intermediate. And the intermediate thing is where you just can't stay with the joystick agility thing with him. Right. He also gets off the line outside, even when they try to press him in the ACC, because his footwork is so sudden and so unpredictable. Right. It's like trying to catch like a gust of wind in your hand when he's coming off the line or whatever. And then, he can do all this stuff, like I said, short and intermediate, but he can also take the top off, go deep, and actually reel those balls in. Like there's only a couple smaller receivers in this class that can do it. One of the other ones, the names that jumps right to the top of my mind is your boy, who I'm sure we're going to talk about in a little bit. Mr. Mims. But yeah, like Zay Flowers has proven that he can win on the outside. The other option, or two other options, I suppose, Quentin Johnston would probably be the number 2 guy that I've mocked to the Vikings most of this process. We'll have to see on that one, because Quentin Johnston wanted to go to the NFL draft and he didn't get invited. And the other top 4 consensus, or I'm sorry, the other 3 of the top 4 consensus receivers, they were all invited. So, I mean, like, that doesn't mean everything, right? Like, I mean, Matt Corral was invited last year. Malik Willis was invited last year. There are guys that get invited that fall down, and vice versa, guys that don't get invited that end up getting taken, decently high, whatnot. But at least that's one indication from the NFL that the NFL believes there is a real possibility that Quentin Johnston falls out of the first round, or else he would not be there. Right. And so, like, that, we'll have to see on that. I think he would be a perfect compliment for Jefferson, because even, like, people say he's raw, or, like, whatever, he has a trump card of going downfield and winning. Quentin Johnston has a wingspan of like 6'8" or 6'9" or whatever, and a vertical over 40 inches. And he does go, when he goes up, he can get higher than anyone, and he extends for the ball downfield. He has some other catch point issues on the freebies, which I had this supposition was like, people would say, oh, he's a body catcher. No, he's not. They're telling on themselves by saying that, because you've seen too many times on his film where he goes up and it fully extends, where, he's running downfield and Dugan tries a bucket throw and he fully extends out, where it's an errant throw and he has to go outside the frame and he spears it or whatever. What I noticed on his film was it was always when his feet were set on, like I said, a freebie, like, intermediate type pass or whatever. And, he had a couple yards of separation or whatever. Maybe he, slammed on the brakes and then he came back and it was a free throw for Dugan. That's when you'd see some of these bad drops where he would let it get into his frame. And the more I watched him, I'm like, it's not because he's a body catcher, not because he has bad hands. We've seen otherwise. It's because he's thinking about the run after the catch. And he's very good running after the catch, like in terms of like all the metrics of broken tackles for us and everything like that in the receiver class. And
you see NFL players do that, like, right? I mean, that happens in the NFL on a regular basis, where you catch them turning their head just a little early and they didn't reel it in, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And that, that's something that the receiver coaches talk to you about and whatnot. But like, guys that are gifted after it's funny, Sam Laporta of Iowa, he has this issue, but on a much smaller scale. But you'll also see him flub a freebie because he's already sort of starting to turn his body, whatnot, or took the eye off the ball because he wants to start that turn. And so anyway, that was my supposition about Johnson that explained both the concentration drops, whatever, on his, because he's around 10% career drop rate, and then also the body catching thing. It's funny, a couple weeks after that, CBS Sports put out a story where they quoted Quentin Johnston's receiver coach, and he said almost verbatim what I just said. He's like, Quentin don't have a problem extending. Quentin don't have a problem with his hands. It's that his eyes leave the ball early because he's already thinking about turning around with his run after the catch thing. So I thought that was interesting. The whole point being, you can fix that stuff, right? Like, I don't think he's ever going to run a full route tree because he's really good at a couple specific ones with the size, speed, athleticism thing. And then, running after the catch, or you can also just have him on the end arounds. TCU did this sometimes where you can use him a little bit in the run game. I ain't going to say he's Debo or whatever, but he shares a lot of similarities to Brandon Ayuk plus 2 inches, 3 inches, like, a taller Brandon Ayuk. Yeah. So anyway, the whole point being,
what's interesting about him, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. What's interesting about him is I've heard a lot of like comparisons. We've had a lot of people on the show come talk wide receivers, obviously, right? It's a huge need. You're one mind that I respect a lot because you and I typically see eye to eye on a lot of prospects. I hear Brandon Ayuk with 2-3 more inches, right? I heard somebody I would almost say it's disrespectfully comparing to Laviska Shenault. And I'm like,
he's
okay, so
catch for sure.
So that's probably the floor for Quentin Johnston, right? Where Ayuk's probably not ceiling, but maybe probable expectation that you see in him. Would that be a fair comparison?
No, I mean, like it's fair. It's a fair analogy, analogous for the run after the catch for sure, because they run very similar with the head of steam, and they get more power behind them than you would think because they start hurtling downfield or whatever. But I don't get that one outside of that, because Laviska Shenault at Colorado, they would manufacture all the touches for him close to the line of scrimmage. Like the whole big thing about him coming out, it was, can he ever learn how to win with his routes, with the quick break and stuff, and become a nuanced route runner, intermediate, and then can he win downfield? Colorado, because they were such a crappy team, they just manufactured all these touch for him because they were like, Laviska, like, you need to help us win games because we can't otherwise or whatever. With Quentin Johnston, his ADOT was absurd at TCU because it was the opposite usage. They were sending him downfield quite a bit and then, having him win downfield, whatever. So, I mean, outside of that, like the run after the catch, yes, that is very close. In fact, my colleague, Derek Brown at Fantasy Pros, a couple months ago when he wrote up Quentin Johnston, he called him, what was the other one? It was like this. His comp was like a Frankenstein of Laviska Shenault's running after the catch, and I forget the other receiver that he paired with it or whatever. But Brandon Ayuk most closely resembles both of those things put together, and the athletic testing package and everything else is very close, outside of just adding those couple inches to Laviska Shenault, including having the long arms, like the whole deal.
Yeah, he ran a little faster than I thought he was going to. So that kind of stabilized on my top 10 board. That kind of stabilized him from a bigger fall than I was expecting. Just because on tape, he doesn't look super, super fast, but he looks like he doesn't have the breakaway speed, but I think, at least based on testing numbers, he ran a little faster than his tape maybe had suggested. So.
Interestingly, like I actually think the opposite. I think he does look fast on film in terms of getting downfield. I think his bigger problem is it's the nuance with the route running stuff, and it doesn't have to just do with like altering the tempo and like different stuff like that. He needs to be taught how to stack cornerbacks when he's got them dead to rights, like different stuff, like just like the nuance stuff. Like there's more rawness on some of the rough edges of his game than the other top guys. It's just like his fastball, he throws it way harder than any other receiver prospect in this class. Now, it's funny, he was on Bruce Feldman's last freak list or whatever. Feldman actually said that he had confirmed 4.4s in the past. He was a track freak in high school. He didn't quite get there. I think the final one at the pro day was, what was it, 4.5 flat, something like that.
I think it was 4.49.
4.49. Okay, yeah.
I think that's what I saw.
Yeah. So, and it was interesting too, the when the sports books dropped the combine props, like Quentin Johnston didn't end up running. He deferred to the pro day, but like they dropped the lines obviously like the week before or whatever. They had Quentin Johnston at 4.4 flat. Now the market did correctly bet that up to 4.44, but that's what it was available at, like going into the receiver testing day, when they started to come out that he wasn't going to run or whatever. But yeah, I mean, like, you want to, with him, you can consider it a dice. I guess this is, long story short, you can consider him like a dice roll and a play on potential. But I think that his floor has been undersold, because even if he doesn't develop the route stuff, and even if he keeps having sort of that frustrating habit of sometimes thinking about the run after the catch on the freebie stuff before the catch point, he is going to be, in my opinion, at least like a guy like the DJ Shark fella or somebody like that, where on the outside, they force the defense back, because he's always going to be able to win downfield. Like he can get higher than you. He could get better at it by, things like, again, like when he has a step or two on the corner, stacking them, different stuff like that. He could certainly get better at it, but like that thing is going to play at the next level. The question is the other stuff. But like, I think at minimum, he's a solid NFL wide receiver too, that pops the top of the defense. And he's the only receiver in this class that has a potential to be like a legit star, like a top 10 receiver in the NFL, in my opinion. I don't think Jackson Smith and Jigba has the highest floor by far in this receiver class, but I don't think his ceiling is like, the number 8 receiver in the NFL. I could end up being proven wrong for sure, but I think Jack Smith-Njigba, his ceiling is more like the 20th best receiver in the NFL, whatever, right?
Yeah, I think I could see Smith-Njigba getting up to that point, but it's not going to be sexy, right? It's going to be the route of a Cooper Kupp, right? Where, and again, I'm not trying to compare the two apples to apples here or anything like that, but just saying it doesn't always look sexy. It's going to be a lot of catches, and it's going to be a chain mover mentality and maybe break one away here and there. Because he does have a pretty good contact balance. Smith-Njigba does. Not as great as I'd hope, but for a receiver, it's pretty solid. So, all right. So we talked top receivers, and actually just real quick, just interested, and we can try to do this quickly. If you had to rank your top 5 receivers right now, how would you rank them right now?
Let me pull up my sheet. I mean, I know Johnston first, Smith-Njigba is second, Flowers. Oh, actually, I can do it from memory. Flowers third, Addison fourth, and I think Mims is fifth. Like I really like Marvin Mims. Mims is not in the top 5. You look around like the other lists in the industry, but I don't really get why, to be honest. Like, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but maybe let me maybe do a few bars for the audience at home. Marvin Mims still, to this day, holds the all-time Texas prep record for receiving yards by a wide receiver. Like, still, right? Like, and you know how awesome Texas high school football is. He did that. Then he goes to Oklahoma, was a star as a freshman, immediately got on the field for one of the better offensive coaches that we've ever had in college football, in Lincoln Riley. And then so like he was destined for greatness. Unfortunately, the last 2 years, circumstances went hardcore against him. In 2021, it was Spencer Rattler was in the tank for most of the regular season. Then they eventually pulled the plug on him for Caleb Williams. True, it's Caleb Williams, yeah, but he was a true freshman coming in, and was his first start against Kansas that year in November. Maybe it was the game before that, but like
it was the game after Texas. I remember that.
Okay, yeah, like I mean, it was
that Texas game and led that massive comeback. Marvin Mims has 2 touchdowns that game. I think the first 2 of the year.
He was happy to be rid of Spencer Rattler, I think, at that point. Sure. I don't know what happened to Spencer at the beginning of that year. But then you also had Lincoln Riley clearly had one foot out the door. There was all the rumors that he was, negotiating with LSU during the year. Ends up taking a similar contract to what Brian Kelly got at LSU at USC. But then the next year, because Lincoln left and then he took Caleb Williams with him. Last year, you had Brent Venables, pure defensive coach at Clemson, and they just did not get the offense up and running quick enough. I mean, it was like Dylan Gabriel's an okay quarterback, but like the offense lacked continuity. It was a bunch of these guys coming together, playing in this new system. A lot of them, there were several guys, first-time starters, whatever. It was not a great environment for like a special receiver like Mims, whatever. But anyway.
And he still showed out, too. I mean, like, I think it was like 1,100 or so yards, and on like 50 some or 60 some catches, average 20 yards per catch. But what I loved actually about the transition was in Lincoln Riley's offense, he didn't have as much creativity or freedom to do things downfield as much. Now, obviously he's still got downfield in that offense, but even like intermediate, he was able to do more in Jeff Lebby's offense in that realm, which I think showcased a little bit more of his versatility to the NFL teams.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, that was important because, like we were talking about with Flowers, I think Mims even more so. Like Mims is absolutely a proven downfield killer. If you were just to stack up like the best, 5 or best 10 catches of every receiver in this class, and then you ask the public to vote on which one is the most impressive, Marvin Mims would destroy that poll. Like,
he probably has 3 of the top 5.
Yeah, no, like for real. Like and like there's I know 2 of them for sure would be at the top because I didn't see nastier catches in this one. Was it against Texas, that one downfield where I still don't know how he swept that 1 foot in with the sideline right near the goal line? I think that was the Texas game.
Was Texas 2 years ago. Actually, and that's an NFL catch. So he got the knee down and for good measure, he actually got his elbow down before he went out of bounds too in the front corner of the end zone.
That's one where like it looks like a glitch when you're watching it. Like I've watched that catch 10,000 times and I still don't know how he caught the ball and then got both, he was able to whatever. They do there's one of the angles where you can see him sweeping the foot around and like it's literally like a glitch. Like his feet have eyes and they know exactly where the sideline is or whatever. And then the other one I'm thinking of, I mean, you could toss out a bunch, but like the other one that to me was like, what the F is like a Neo catch, like I said, for the Matrix was, I believe this was against Texas Tech, but you watch so much of these cutoffs, everything starts blending. But I think it was Texas Tech. But anyway, it was an errant pass. It goes behind the defender. I don't know how Mims saw the ball. I certainly don't know how he caught it because he sticks out one hand behind the defender and somehow spears the ball out of the air. Like that is. It's like a pool shot by like a pool master, like the best pool shark in the world, where it's like, what the F just happened? The ball's ricochet, all the balls are going in or whatever. It's like, what is this?
That was against Tech, by the way.
Against Tech, yeah. Like the downfield stuff. So he's really interesting in that in his size package, his usage at Oklahoma, you were sort of alluding to this. All 3 seasons he was on campus, 35% or more of his targets came 20 plus yards downfield. You don't see that a ton from receivers that size, but again, awesome ball skills, the nastiest catches you'll ever see, confirm the athleticism during the pre-draft process. He's a really good athlete. The one question, and you did well to set this up, it's in the intermediate area just because he was so good at that trick that happened quite a bit. But like, I'm not as concerned about that. I mean, obviously, as indicated by my ranking, I'm not nearly as concerned about that as other people, that less of the usage came in that area than analogous receivers. Because I seen him win in the intermediate area before, and he proved the concept of his agility. I think his agility scores were like 75th percentile, which is more than enough. That kid can move. We've seen that on the field or whatever. So yeah, I mean, some of the route running stuff in short, specifically intermediate, it's going to have to be worked on more just because it wasn't as much at Oklahoma. But that kid is super talented.
Well, and one of the sneaky good things about his game that people don't realize that makes him a really, really good fit here. Not only the downfield speed, right? Open up things, hopefully for Justin Jefferson to not constantly get double teamed with a safety over top, is his ability to block. He is a feisty little blocker out there. Again, I know we have alluded to his size, right? He's like 5'10", 5'11", 180 some pounds. Like he's not a big guy, but you watch the run game for Oklahoma and he's downfield blocking, and he's not just is he like putting an attempt out there, he's actually moving people and creating opportunities downfield. So all right, so we gone through receivers. By the way, he's my number 3 receiver on my top 5 list. So
I love it.
A little biased maybe, but also I think he's earned it.
I was looking up to add context to what you were saying. Last year, amongst my top 5 receivers that I just mentioned that list, he was number 2 in PFF run blocking grade. So just a quantifiable metric to add to that.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, I didn't even know that he was number 2. That's amazing. All right, so we've gone through quarterbacks, we've gone through receivers, we've eaten up a ton of time. I know you're really busy, man, so I don't want to take up too much more. So we're going to just end with this. Can you walk our listeners through maybe your top 5 favorite deep sleepers or like mid-round sleepers that you think the Vikings should be targeting with, maybe 119, 158, and 211, those kind of picks?
Yeah, the top one, I guess, in terms of offensive skill guys would be Evan Hall, who Vikings fans will learn to love because he's from Maple Grove. He was a track star in high school. He goes to Northwestern. He already knows how to wear purple. He looks good in purple. But Evan Hall, underrated for other reasons than Marvin Mims. The perception of Marvin Mims, it was more like regression, but it's like he's actually not regressing. He's just in bad circumstances. Evan Hall he was in bad circumstances the whole time. Northwestern went 1-11 last year. They only had one other good player on offense, Peter Skoronski, who everybody knows about, but the other 9 starters were not good. And so Evan Hall did not have the running lanes that a lot of other running backs in this class did, but he is the most versatile receiving weapon in this class by the stats. Percentage of snaps in the slot, percentage of snaps on the boundary, receiving yards, receptions, ADOT for the running back class, like everything like that. He runs smooth routes no matter where he is deployed. He has soft hands and a really good feel for bodies in space after that. Like he's really, like I mentioned the yards after the catch thing, whatever. And I also think he is an underrated runner just because of the circumstances he was in, constantly confronted by guys crashing through the line, like right after he got the ball. And he got really good about sensing that and then developing the alternate plan immediately. He has really good agility, surprising agility. Like he's one of those guys who bounce, and he can make people miss like that and changes his running path, whatever. Good acceleration. And some were questioning his speed coming into the process, which was ridiculous if you knew that he was a track star back in the day, whatever. I think the reason for this, well, there's two reasons for this. I'm not going to say one of them. But the other one is on tape, you don't see him galloping in the open field often, but that's because of the circumstance of the Northwestern offense. Like, it just was what it was. But anyway, the receiving utility speaks for itself. The athletic package, he proved the concept of and above and beyond what anyone's expectations were. I think he was 92nd percentile, I'll have it here in a second, 93rd percentile size adjusted athlete and a rocked up kid too. So like there's not many 93rd percentile running backs in this class that were over 205 pounds. He's 209 pounds, 93rd percentile athlete. And like I said, the other stuff speaks for itself. He is being crazy slept on during this process. And the other thing I'll say is I have heard that the Vikings have provisionally worked out trade terms with an AFC team to trade Dalvin Cook, but that they're not going to consummate it until after June 1st because the cap savings on a trade now, Delvin, I think, again, from memory, I think it's either slightly under 8 or slightly under 7 of what they would save if they trade him right now. If you wait until after June 1st, it goes up to $11 million in cap that you save. That's super important for the Vikings because right now I think they only have 1.2 or 1.4, like something like that million. They can't even sign their first round pick with the cap space they have now. So every $1 million of it counts. But anyway, obviously with the idea that Delvin is going to be moved, maybe not this weekend, but maybe after June 1st, going to be moved. You need another running back, right? Because you have Madison, you have Chandler, and Wangu is going to be on the roster either way. You could use a guy to mix in there with Chandler and Alexander Madison. Evan Hall would be a very good fit next to those guys as like this movable chess piece type fella.
He's I think he's one of Vikings happy hours guys. I know Miles loves him. I like him a lot. You watch the combine and you just kind of notice certain things. Every carry he had, he took to the house. Doesn't matter if the drill was 10 yards away or if it was 60 yards away. He did that at the
Senior Bowl too.
Yep. And so you watch him just doing that. I'm like, again, not that like that should make or break somebody's evaluation of a guy.
Coaches
but again,
notice.
Scouts just notice. Like another added thing, right?
Daniel
like
Jeremiah he's a notice.
Yeah, they did. Well, I remember them talking about it too. So I love that. I love that first sleeper there. Who else you got?
Any specific position? I got sleepers that ever
whatever, whoever you like for the Vikings. Our positional needs. D tackle will potentially need an edge rusher. Safety is a sneaky need at some point. Linebacker. I mean, there's a lot.
Yeah, at receiver. Obviously, that's one. Like if they don't end up taking one in the first round or whatever, I think Puka Nacua is another guy that we've seen down in Mobile. Matt and Miles were down in Mobile with us, and he was a guy that impressed all of us. Puka Nacua can do a whole bunch of stuff. He tested a little bit disappointingly was 52nd percentile athlete, but he proved he can win on the outside at BYU, and he has a very diversified skill set. He's one of the better running receivers in this class. In fact, the reason he missed a bunch of time last season was because they gave him 2 end arounds in the first quarter against South Florida, and he ran both of them to the house. And then BYU's coaching staff got greedy and did it a third time. And South Florida's defense is like, we've seen this twice. We ain't letting that happen again. Swarmed him, and then he got injured, and then he was out for however many weeks it was. But every time Puka Nacua was on the field, Jaron Hall looked okay, looked passable,
right.
Looked like a guy that could get in the NFL. Every time Puka Nacua is not on the field, it's like, oh boy, I don't know about this Jaron Hall fella. So I like Nacua again, like in a well-built receiver too. He weighed in at are measured in just a shade under 6'2" and 201 pounds. He would be one at the receiver position. I'm looking through the other ones where I'm at. The interior defensive line, the Vikings, what they need there, it's a nose tackle, right? Like right now, the projected starter, I believe, is Tonga, going back to BYU. And I don't know that, in the first round, there ain't even like a pure nose tackle that, like that fits the slot there, whatever. But there's a couple interesting ones late. And a couple ones that I think are, at their price point are going to be, like solid values. But not only that, you can, at the very least, platoon them with Tonga right away. I really like Jarrett Clark from Coastal Carolina. He has ludicrous dimensions. He's 6'3" and a quarter and measured in at 334. Might have lost a little bit of weight before the combine for the testing. He plays at over 340. But here's the crazy thing about Jarrett Clark. His wingspan is a legitimate 82 inches, which is one of the longer ones. Like in the interior class, Siaki Ika, the Baylor kid, who's like an analogous nose tackle type guy who's going to go higher. His wingspan is under 76 inches. It's like, 75 plus or whatever. Kind of interesting, an enormous wide body guy in the interior with that enormous wingspan. And he was better than people just didn't see him, Jarrett Clark, because he was at Coastal. Ryan, I know you did at least for one game. Remember we went to Buffalo Wild Wings and I kept asking the waiter, put on the Coastal Carolina game. I lost money that night in the Coastal Carolina game, but Jarrett Clark does damage. His PFF grade last year's 79 flat. Posted pressure rate, different stuff like that was really solid. He'd be a guy to look at. Broderick Martin would be another one I toss out.
That's who I was gonna say. Broderick Martin, Western I like Kentucky. Him too.
Yeah, I asked Eric Galko, the Shrine Game. I don't even know what his title is, CEO or head honcho or czar, however you want to say it. But I asked him about. I wanted to know about what NFL teams were saying about the Colburn kid from Texas, and then Broderick Martin, and like specifically about Broderick Martin, because more people know about Colburn. Colburn's going to go higher. And he was like, the NFL likes Broderick Martin. But he's going to go on day 3. But he's another guy that has ridiculous physical dimensions. I'm grabbing it right now. He did not go to the combine, which is probably a mistake by the NFL. They make a couple every year. Broderick Martin's even taller than Clark, almost 6'5", weighed in at 330, but again, he going to play heavier than that in the NFL. He only had a 21st percentile size adjusted athletic score. Jarrett Clark, actually, this is one of the reasons I like Clark more, was 52nd. And Jarrett Clark, the drills that he excelled at, they directly translate to success in the NFL, like the agility stuff, whatnot. I don't give a crap what a nose tackle runs a 40 in. You just toss it out. They ain't never going to be running a straight line 40 yards in the NFL. Going back to Broderick Martin, he has that enormous package, and we were talking about wingspan and Jarrett Clark, how impressive that is on a player that size. Get a load of Broderick Martin's wingspan. It's 83 plus inches, 83 and a little bit over a quarter. 80 on my sheet, it says 83.28. But that's crazy. Not quite as athletic, like I said, as Jarrett Clark, but that enormous dimensions. He went to the Shrine Game. The NFL likes him. I do know. So he is going to be picked somewhere middle of day 3, whatever. So that'd be one for that. I'll toss out a corner. Oh, people are going to love this one. My favorite cornerback sleeper is a local kid, Terrell Smith from the Gophers.
Well, there you go.
It was really interesting. You do this job, like your Aprils are ridiculous, but then your May and June, it's like you're on like summer break, like a teacher, right? Like, and then in July, I gotta get nasty with the college football stuff again, the preview stuff, whatnot. But in May and June, that's when you'll get texts or DMs or you get contacted some by NFL agents that are like, specifically with guys in this area, that'll be like, hey, do you, like a couple years ago, do you happen to have Daniel Falele's phone number? I was like, no, the guy's not even on Facebook. Like, I'm not texting Daniel Falele. I got contacted by 3 different NFL agents last May or between May and June about, do you have Terrell Smith's contact information? And I was like, Terrell Smith, why are they asking about Terrell? Like, it was really random, right? Like Terrell Smith up in, like prior to this past season was not good. He was a good athlete, yeah, but like on the field was not very good. So I was like, why are they interested in that guy? Like no shade, but I was like, are you just making the logical leap of like the light will turn on? The light turned on last year. Yeah. So like they were on it. The agents, the NFL, they were monitoring that kid, and he effing showed out last year. People are sleeping on that kid, like, because they're going more off the grade previous to last season. You put, like, if you were to combine like the athletic profile of the cornerback class with their tape last year, he might be a top 5 corner in this entire class. Like the dimension. So he comes in, measures 6'1.5" 204 pounds. His size adjusted athletics composite 87 percentile. And last year, his PFF grade 80.9. He was good on the pass rush and his limited snaps. Doing that, he supported the run, was one of the better cornerbacks in this class at helping in the run. And his coverage grade shot up. Like, he finally figured it out on the outside is the whole point. Like, every game, every aspect of his game jumped up, whatever. With him, the equation becomes like, he's a one-year wonder, right? Like, and it's like, was any of that smoke and mirrors? But I don't think it was. Like, it's all on tape from last year. Like I said, if you only knew about last year and you did not know the context of before, and you were just doing that with all the guys in the class and then putting that with their athletic profile, you would have them even higher than I have them now. Like, right. I had to bake some of the stuff in from before, because I like it when they've done it over years, or you see the consistent developmental curve. With him, it was like struggle, stud, right? But the stuff I was getting contacted about and the things that you heard about him beforehand, like that stuff assuages some of my concerns about him. I have Terrell.
And sometimes it just takes a little bit of time for that light bulb to click, I mean, sure. Sometimes it does, I like him a lot.
I have Terrell Smith, cornerback 11. Like, if you look around the industry, there's a lot of people have him in the 20s. That kid's getting slept on. And by the way, I think on draft weekend, he's going to go higher than people think. He's one of those guys where if the Vikings don't, like, in the scenario we were talking about before, like taking the, for instance, receiver, or if the Danielle Hunter stuff is real, that he's pissed off, and then maybe they'd look at an edge rusher. Certainly you need interior defense. If they go a different direction, Terrell Smith is absolutely someone they should think super long and hard about in the 3rd round, if he even gets there. But I don't even know if he's going to get to where the Vikings are picking in the 3rd round.
Have you, I love Terrell Smith, so I love the talker there, and I'm glad you mentioned him. One other guy I want to quick mention, and then we'll wrap this up, is have you done much work on Starling Thomas?
Oh, yeah, the UAB kid.
UAB, yeah.
Yeah, he's solid. I got him 20.
Talk about an athlete.
Yeah. Like, so a little bit of smaller side, at 180 in terms of the frame, but yeah, like, he was awesome on the field, and you were just waiting for the athletic profile. He's been rising up boards for sure. Like, it's funny, I have him basically where everybody else has Terrell Smith, but like, sure. I have Starling Thomas got one of the reasons that, like, he sort of flew under the radar up until now is because he was another guy that got spurned from the combine, but I got him ranked over numerous cornerback, like higher name cornerbacks that went to the combine. It's fun. I'm looking at my sheet right now. The guy that I have ranked right behind him is Eli Ricks, right? Who, like, everyone thought was going to be a 1st round pick a year ago, or whatever, like, and they transferred to Alabama, whatnot. But, like, I like Starling Thomas's game for sure. By the way, UAB played nasty defense, and he was one of the big reasons why.
Absolutely. I don't mind Eli Ricks either, but I think I need to see more from him. That's my only issue.
Ryan, are you ready for my Eli Ricks comp?
You got to hear it.
Thought a lot about this one. It's one that's near and dear to Minnesotans' hearts, Viking country heart. Can you think of someone I might have comp Eli Ricks to?
I'm drawing a blank.
Caleb Evans.
Okay. Yeah, I can see it, I guess, too.
I don't think he moves around like some people thought when he was playing across from Stingley on that awesome 2019 team.
Yeah.
He has the same sort of dimensions and sort of the same kind of game as 50th percentile athlete. But yeah, I mean, he's overhyped. I think he's going to fall further than people think, based on getting tossed on some of them too early mocks.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of great content. I really appreciate you coming on. We stayed a little longer than I think I had promised you earlier, but I really appreciate it. Anything that you have coming out over the next week and a half that our listeners should go and try to find yet?
Too much stuff, if I'm being honest.
Fantasy Pros.
I'm excited
exclusive
to catch
content.
Yeah, Fantasy Pros, Betting Pros, and Twitter Thor KU.
Yeah, well, and for the listeners that are watching or listening in on this, make sure you do check out his Fantasy Pros content. Even subscribe. He's got some really, really good content. He puts out a lot of free stuff, but there's some exclusive content that's out there that's well worth the money to get your eyes on, especially during draft season. So
appreciate it, brother.
Again, a lot of respect for you, Thor. Thank you so much for coming on. Everyone, make sure that you like and subscribe. We're doing a giveaway once we get to 3,000 subscribers. That's Badass Wood Art Skol sign. So make sure you subscribe, get in the drawing for that. I think you're going to really like it. Great piece for your man cave or your Vikings watching zone.
That guy's
area.
Super talented, by the way. I've seen his stuff on Twitter. Like I want to be involved in the drawing. Like he's got sick stuff.
Well, subscribe and then you will be.
Am I eligible?
You are eligible.
What if I'm already subscribed? Because I'm already subscribed.
No, it all counts. We're gonna do a drawing from all of our subscribers. So I have a Randy Moss piece coming my way. I'm gonna be putting up.
Wait, the moon one? I seen his moon one.
I didn't do the moon one. I got one with the big throw and he's doing a thumbs up. Yeah, it'll be nasty. So
that's a sick one too. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, till next time, everyone. Skol Vikings.